No, this title is not clickbait. Watch the video and find out how something this crazy is not clickbait. Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe is out and about, causing quite the hubbub with how much fun-up it is. But that doesn't mean there isn't a ton of history with the original game. Even ignoring that I still have tons of other videos about the original that I still need to make, whoops. But would you think that, for a game as old as Return to Dreamland, there wouldn't be very much to talk about? It came out in 2011 after all. Triple Deluxe was 3 years after. What could possibly be left in this ancient relic of a game? Well, for one thing, it's really not that old, but I'll just give you the short answer: there's more than you could ever imagine. Today, I want to talk about a fairly recent innovation that completely changed the way that people speedrun Kirby's Return to Dreamland. Even though I talk a lot about Return to Dreamland on this channel, it's not like the game came out and people, snap of a finger, instantly knew how to speedrun it. Tons of small innovations have been made over the years to lower the world record. I won't delve too deep into that aspect since it's not really the point of the video, but to get a bit specific, the two main categories, 100% and any percent, are very different. The 100% category became one of the most varied Kirby speed games as far as abilities go. Competitive runs saw use for almost every single ability, however brief, and while it was definitely a lot to memorize, it made for an insanely varied category. Any percent, meanwhile, was largely dominated by Wing, an ability that in itself had a ton of variety to what it could do. Both runs were really neat to watch. But there was something that always had untapped potential in, shoot, every category imaginable. But what could that be? Well, Return to Dreamland is many things. A game that has scope shot in it for one. Oh! But what can drastically change even the most casual of playthroughs is one simple feature: multiplayer. Grab another controller and you can play as one of Day-to-Day, Meta Knight, Bandana D, everyone's idol, or another Kirby. While multiplayer strats are common in other speedrun games, they were never deemed too necessary for Return. Any percent was so dominated by Wing that you just never really had to use anything else, while Hundo, or 100%, was so well routed that most runs stuck to one player, with two-player stuff happening here and there very occasionally. While top runners like Demolition 14 and Utadon would have a second character show up now and then, they'd help out a bit and leave. Hardly fitting for everyone's idol. And then, everything changed when runners like Nippo, Pro Hybrid, Aiden, even some of the aforementioned runners like Demo, or experienced runners in other games like Shiro, decided to give multiplayer strats a try. They all set out to find multiplayer strats that could help lower the world record time, or at the very least just have fun looking for them since, like I just said, multiplayer stuff wasn't really the focal point of a lot of these speedruns. They were pretty simple at first, like spawning a second Kirby to get specific abilities for puzzles so that Kirby could keep the really good ones, or grab energy spheres during some of the more automated segments, or even get player 2 inhaled by Wispy to save some time by not getting eaten. Makes sense. I save a lot of time in my day-to-day life by not getting eaten, so the logic adds up. Then things started getting a bit more interesting. Ideas like having a second player grab a key and then have them teleport around the screen so Kirby could use their ability and not be slowed down were proven very effective. So effective and so frequent that the three runners I mentioned earlier joked about finding more key strats literally every time a key showed up. Then, in late 2021, things started to get next level. A lot of strats were being discovered with Kirby and Friend, but the three had discovered what every human being dreams of discovering: a half-second time save in something that takes 2.5 hours. Just think of all the things you can do in half of a second. Why, you could give this video a like, ring the notification bell after subscribing to be notified whenever I upload, and leave a comment with your thoughts of the insanity of the strats we're talking about here. And it's really that simple. Just don't time yourself doing that. Just let me have this one, please. Thank you. Anyway, so what did Nippo do to get this insane time save? Well, simple. Instead of having Kirby and Friend, there is now Kirby and Friends. That's plural. There was an S at the end of that. The logic was, while it wasn't worth having Kirby jump off Meta Knight, get the super ability for the first level, Cookie Country 1, jump back on Meta Knight, and then keep schmovin', it was worth using Meta Knight at the start of the level and just having a player 3 spawn to get the super ability while zooming still on Meta Knight. Now, don't get me wrong, spawning a Kirby out of thin air does take some time, yeah, but it did take less time than the alternative. Half a second less, to be precise. Oh yeah. From here, it was suddenly viable to use Meta Knight in the Another Dimension segments. or the time rifts. We can call them that so that my English doesn't completely deteriorate, alright? And from there, the hunt was on to find as many time saves as possible just with that discovery alone. There is one problem with everything that we've been talking about, though. As I'm sure most of you are thinking right now, cool as this all sounds, don't get me wrong, how are you going to speed run a game with more than 2 controllers? Heck, how are you gonna do it with more than just 1? I can barely make 2 controllers work when I'm playing casually myself, but 3? Eesh. Fortunately, Nippo already had an answer from running Kirby Superstar, meaning this was a thing that he was already doing. And what was he doing? Basically, by holding 2, or even 3, and spoilers, eventually 4, controllers together, inputs on the player 2 side of things would be much, much easier. But how did he manage to hold all of them together? I can't imagine holding all of them with your hand while still moving Kirby around isn't very easy. Bam! Rubber band, baby! I told you the title wasn't clickbait. With this setup, running this game with any number of controllers was not only easier, but genuinely, humanly doable. At this point, even ignoring the time rift saves, there were an absolute ton of strats to find elsewhere. For example, you know the big boot Kirby can hop into to jump around? It's a nifty boot, but it's kinda slow. So how about Mario World Yoshiing the other Kirbys and Bandanity? It doesn't make much of a difference, but you know, everyone's idle and all, and using them to skip most of a puzzle. Or using the piggyback puff, or stack attack as people call it. I kinda like that name more, but piggyback puff, kinda cute, to get faster kills on bosses. But Claire, bosses have more health with more players. Stack attack. But the wild part is that we haven't seen the wildest part yet. I occasionally make videos going over some insane tech in Kirby games, like the Quaz glitch in Kirby's Adventure, or Ninja overtaking Hammer for boss rushes, stuff like that. But when you're playing a game specifically known for being stable and glitchless, and suddenly Dedede moves through the ceiling, this was the biggest discovery of all. The one that we call the Wing Zip. And while there's frankly enough to talk about here to make Wing Zip its own video, the very basic idea is that when another player warps to player 1 Kirby, if player 1 Kirby is high enough on a ceiling, the game will shoot the other character to the nearest bit of ground up above. It's pretty insane. If you're watching all of this and you think that it sounds crazy, then it is, but it's all true. In fact, my segue into this next part of the video is so bad, I'm not going to use it, and instead mention that 3 runners that really pioneered these multiplayer strats, I mentioned them already, but if you need a refresher, Nippo, Pro Hybrid, and Eden, socials in the description, helped me with the creation of this video. And Nippo, the one who discovered Wing Zip, and a bunch of the other really cool strats, but mostly Wing Zip, got the first 2-player plus world record over Demo and Utadon's 1, barely 2-player world record runs. Well, more like that Demo actually did have 2-player strats in his runs, just none of the super advanced stuff that Pro Hybrid, Aiden, and Nippo had found, while Utadon didn't really have multiplayer at all. While all 3 of them helped with the video, I was actually able to get Nippo's perspective on getting the world record and what led up to it, and a bunch of cool stuff like that. Take it away, Nippo!
Hi, I'm Nippo. I would like to go through my experience with Return to Dreamland speedrunning. I never saw Return to Dreamland as a game I would ever speedrun. It was a game that did not appeal to me at the time, as I was a fan of fast-paced platformers such as the game I was currently running, Kirby Superstar. I was watching Pro Hybrid doing runs of the game, and I thought the 100% route looked cool, and I enjoyed its diverse use of Kirby abilities. I also liked the use of multiple controllers, as it provided a new challenge for me. I decided it would be fun to just learn the game casually. As I began to learn the route, I slowly started to realize that there was untapped potential in this game. The current record holder at the time, Demolition, didn't use multiplayer strats as much as he could have. I took this as an opportunity to start developing new routes and strategies to find time saves. Though these new optimizations only saved 1 or 2 seconds, I started to build up so many that they accumulated by a ton. My favorite strategies were ones that involved 3 or even 4 controllers. Not only did they save a lot of time, but they were ridiculous and made for a very entertaining speedrun. I entered this game with not having a top leaderboard spot in mind, and it honestly stayed that way for quite a while. I just enjoyed strat hunting for this game and had no intention of really being a top contender. I think my wake-up call was when I found ceiling zips, which at the time was an insane find because we assumed that this game had no sort of collision glitches. This was what told me that if I grinded hard enough, I could get the record. And eventually that record was achieved. The run was pretty sloppy in my opinion, but it showed how far this game can go with multiplayer being used to its full potential. Eventually, Shiro came around and demolished my time with most of the strats that I used. It was pretty crazy to see how low the time went once things are more optimized. I've been retired at this point, as 100% was a very long speedrun, and given that the stakes were high with, not being able to lose your ability pretty much the entire run, it was pretty stressful and I just didn't feel like playing it anymore. Shiro worked hard and he definitely deserves the world record that he worked for. With that being said, I enjoy looking back at all of the things that I've found throughout my year of playing this game. Pro Hybrid and Aiden were a huge motivator and have helped me find many things as well. Shiro continued to find even more time saves after I left the scene. So I hope that this motivates someone out there to pick up the game and learn the speedrun. And with the deluxe version out, I'm sure that there are many more things to find in that game too.
As Nippo mentioned, he would eventually lose this world record run to Shiro. It didn't happen overnight or anything, but Shiro is an incredible Kirby runner who really worked on Return to Dreamland once these multiplayer strats were discovered. And Shiro would go on to discover some amazing things. This totally cracked bomb strat is my personal favorite. But if any channel familiars remember that Cutter video that I made where Day-to-Day used Cutter to skip a section that Sword had to go through, yes, even in this video I'm talking about how bad Sword is, that was discovered by Shiro. While Nippo's 2-hour 35-minute run was incredible, Shiro's 2-hour 25-minute run really went to show how much untapped potential Return to Dreamland had. And for all we know, there's still plenty of untapped potential within Return to Dreamland, not to mention Return to Dreamland Deluxe. I think both of these games could have a very bright speedrunning future, but I guess we're gonna have to wait and see for that. For now though, Return to Dreamland Original may have plenty of other stuff to do, but if we're just talking about the craziest innovation that the game has ever seen, while the multiplayer strats are all up there, the root of them is by getting a rubber band and doing a good run. Never think an idea is too weird or too wild, because you know what? It could work. And with that, the video is over. Thank you once again to Pro Hybrid, Aiden, and Nippo for helping me with the creation of this video. I really appreciate it. And until I see all of you wonderful people in another video, I have been Claire. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you around. Bye!